Hey y'all, I'm James Wright. Welcome to my shop, and today we're making a marriage signature board. Let's dive in and have some fun. So here's a wood you don't see me use very often. This is maple, hard maple. I know, it's not one of my favorites. It's just kind of blah. But a lot of people like using it. But for this case, I want blah. I want basically paper. I want something that people can write on and you can easily read it. And that means good old hard maple. And I grabbed a board. It was a 1x6. I actually just bought this one at the big box store. And I'm going to cut it down to 3 pieces and then laminate these together to make the field that people are going to sign on. And this kind of determined the size of the project of, what pieces could I get. I judged everything off of this. There are no measurements other than I'm cutting this board into 3 equal parts, and then we can laminate these together. I'm going to use some wood glue on here against my better judgment. I wanted to use some epoxy on this originally, but I decided to use some white PVA, and there are reasons to which you'd want to use one or the other, but this will work perfectly fine. This isn't going to be under stress because it's all made out of the same wood. It shouldn't have any expansion and contraction problems. Now for the frame, we're actually going to be making that out of mahogany. I got some really nice pieces of that I really enjoyed, and this is 3/4 by 1.5 inches, and the frame will be stood up on edge, so it'll be 1.5 inches out from the wall. And we need to actually do all of the shaping on this. I want to put a rabbet into the back of it, and that rabbet will actually house the frame. So it'll go in 1/4 inch by a little over 3/4 inch deep, because I want the frame to house into the rabbet but have a little bit of space so the rabbet actually sticks back, so that the actual field won't be touching the wall. It'll be the frame that's hanging on it. So I'm going to cut the rabbet in with a rabbet plane, or for those of you on the other side of the pond, a rebate plane, and then we're going to come in and chamfer this. And I'm going to put 2 nice clean chamfers on the front edge of this. I wanted to keep a very smooth, clean aesthetic to this. I was originally thinking about doing some beading or some interesting shape on there, but because it's that white background and it's all relatively sharp, I didn't want anything to contrast with it. I wanted to be the specialty to actually be the carving that goes into the back with their names. So 2 chamfers on the front of this, and this is what everyone will see. To create the frame, we're going to make a simple mitered corner, and so we're going to cut these at 45 degrees. And I'm going to cut them roughly with my bench hook. That usually gets you really close. The most important thing is that the top and bottom pieces be precisely the same length, and the 2 side pieces be precisely the same length. What that length is, I really don't care. I'm just getting it close to what I cut out on here. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut one of them, and then I'm going to make the other one match it exactly. And with the bench hook here, I'm going to cut them very close, and then I'm going to shoot them until they are perfect. And this way I can line them up and feel them and know exactly where they are. And I can make the top and bottom and the 2 sides be exactly the same to match. Whatever that size is, I really don't care, because I'm going to make the field in the back match whatever the frame ends up being. And I measured it to be relatively close to where they are, but I'll probably still end up taking 1/4 inch or so. Yes, here I'm going to be using epoxy. The corners in this are very important, because if those break, that's going to be a weak point. There isn't much holding those together in that case, especially in grain with mahogany. Epoxy is most definitely the way to go. It is far stronger than any PVA will ever be on this. And with this frame clamp on here, I can put these in. And the other nice thing is I really don't need a lot of clamping force. If you're using PVA, you really need a lot of clamping force in order to reach its maximum potential. But for this case, we're just going to lightly squeeze it down until it's roughly where it should be, tap the corners. And the nice thing about the frame banding strap is it just holds it in place until it cures. Now we can go back over to the main field, and I'm going to use a card scraper to clean down the face. One of the nice things with hard maple is it is really easy to card scrape. So the softer the wood is, the more difficult it is to scrape. But with this hard maple, it scrapes it so easily. Once that's all cleaned and smooth, I designed this in Canva. It's just some ovals with their names and date in the middle, and then I can print it out to roughly the same size I want. I can actually choose the size I want in MS Paint. It works really, really well for that. And then we can start carving it out using a simple V tool, and basically going around it just like I would a pencil. Slow, light taps. I've got a bunch of videos on how to do this, and it's very, very easy. If you can follow a pencil, if you can follow a line with a pencil, you can do this. Most anyone can do V-carved surface cutting very, very quickly and easily. It's something that you can pick up very, very, very simply and easily. I say that a lot, and it's kind of surprising to people, but yes, with about 5 to 10 minutes of practice, most people could do this. And so we're just going to go around, fill it all in, and then come in with some of the colored epoxy and put that in here. You can see I'm leaving the paper on there. That helps protect it so it doesn't go into the grain quite as much. One of the problems with doing an epoxy fill is you have bleed in, especially with something that's really dark like this. I just use some trans tint dye to add some color to it and pop it out. Once that's out, then I'm going to come in with the chisel, bevel down, and get most of the stuff off and kind of scrape off the high points. And then I can come in with the card scraper and scrape it down. Why would I do this over sanding? Because this is actually much, much faster than sanding, and it gives you a cleaner surface that's ready to go. Sanding is annoying when it comes to epoxy. And with the card scraper, it goes very, very quickly. In this case, my scraper was getting a little dull because I've been doing a lot of scraping with it. So just a couple seconds to clean it up, and we're back to town. And ooh, I love those curl shavings on there. It's just so happy. And I get a really nice, smooth transition. We're going to scrape the whole surface down, make it all nice and clean, and get it ready. I'm going to hit it with some sanding dust on here because I want everything to work into that, and putting the dust allows it to soak down a little farther. Now, I'm not going to hit it with oil because I don't want the oil to get in there and go blotchy. But we're going to come back over here to the frame before we start doing the finish on it. And I want to put some splines into these corners. I like to do it after the glue up. Just makes it easier to hold everything together. So I can come in, mark out the depth on either side, and then with the tendon saw, come down the lines and cut this down. And then all we need to do is remove the material in between. And as long as it's held nicely in the clamp, you can come in with a smaller chisel and pop out these pieces. And this is really enjoyable because anytime you pop out large pieces with a chisel, it's just fun. And I want to cut this down so that the spline works into and actually goes through the joint, and you see it on the inside of the frame. We'll be trimming that out a little bit, but then I can come in with a file or float and clean out the joint and get it nice and clean and ready. Because it's a little bit gappy in there, the best thing you can do is epoxy. It is one of the best gap filling glues, even without some of the glass beads and other things you can do to make it thicker. It works very, very well, and because it's a relatively delicate joint, the epoxy will give it even more strength. I'm going to be using a little bit of maple because it kind of has a nice contrast between that, and then it matches with the face frame, and I like the look of it. A lot of people think maple and walnut is definitely the way to go, and there is a lot of contrast there, but often I think there's too much contrast. If it is overly gappy, like one of the sides was, you can come in with a little more epoxy and fill that in. Some people might add some sawdust to it, though I generally don't like to do that. I prefer to just leave the glue and let it speak for itself. We can trim off the excess once that has cured, and then plane it down. When planing these joints, you want to make sure you plane from the outside into the board. You don't want to plane from the middle of the board out, otherwise you're just going to be blowing out the corners on there. I can take off the heavy material with the low angle jack, and then come in with my smoothing plane and give it that really nice final finish smooth on there that is pleasing to the touch. We can come in with the card scraper and do the little bits of detail all the way around and get everything ready for finish. At this point, we're kind of doing all of the little last minute things that have to come together before it actually comes together. Speaking of it coming together, I left this frame just a little bit big. They made the frame a little small so that the board is a little bit big, and then we can come back and trim it off. And that way, if something didn't come out quite right in the frame, we can make it fit this face, because it's easier to address the face than it is to address the frame. The low angle plane makes it fantastic to just freehand shoot the ends and clean those up and get them nice and clean. I want it to be a relatively tight fit in there. I don't want to be too tight because I want to have a little bit of expansion and contraction, particularly on the top and bottom. But I want to have it so that it kind of squeezes down on there, but there's a little bit of movement top to bottom. And just like that, you can see how this comes together and makes me very happy. The question is, how do we hold this in? Originally, I was planning on doing a couple spikes like you would do for glass, but I decided I'm just going to glue this in place. There really isn't anything holding it in, and it will help support the frame as well. So some glue on the ends, as well as a little bit on the center of the frame will do. And I wonder what kind of glue I'm going to use. Oh yeah, epoxy. I find the more I use it, the more this is just an all-around superior glue to PVA, and I find that I'm using it almost anytime I'd want to glue two things together. I generally go towards epoxy. It's just easier to use. You can dial in the open time to whatever you want it to be. You can make it fast so you can work on it just an hour or two later, or you can make it really slow and have it something you can work on all day long. You're going to slide in the glue, squeeze it down into joint, and then squeeze out the excess. Want to make a hanger to go on the outside, so a pair of needle nose pliers holds the nail in place, and we can drive it down in, and then I'm going to pass it off to Will so he can have it at the wedding. And he had it set up so that everyone could come and sign it, add some memories, and it was one of those really cool things. It was just a good punctuation to the ceremony, and the rest of the time they can come back and look at this. And with those faces, yeah, you can tell I'm happy too. There you have it. This was made for a friend of mine who's getting married, and it's kind of a cool thing. He was able to set up the wedding and everyone could sign it and add some memory to the board. And then I brought it back and I actually sealed it, and with all that being done, now he can hang it up in his house and have something for the future. So I really kind of like this. It was a really cool idea. I really enjoyed this, and thank you to Will for bringing the idea. He came up to me and said, "Hey, have you ever thought about doing something like this?" I'm like, "No." And so there you have it. I hope you like the idea. It's relatively simple, and it's a way to do something that's a little bit different and make a cool wedding gift. If you have any particular questions, thoughts, ideas, snide remarks, then throw those down below. Or if you just want to say, comment down below. Thank you. That actually helps out the channel. I do love it. Every time someone puts a comment down below, they get a heart from me. And that really means a lot because it helps us get in front of more people, all the algorithm things, and just like, comment, share, subscribe. You know all about that. But if you really want to help out us and be an amazing person, think about joining these amazing people. Those are some of the patrons on Patreon. And without patrons or members, we wouldn't exist. We are completely sponsored by you. So thank you for that. If you'd like to find out more about that, you know what to do. I think that'll do it for now. And until next time, have a wonderful day. Mowat is what brings us together today.